Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the player ratings video. We're going to do it a little differently. I've got Pom with me this time, and I know I pre-record these usually, but I thought it would be a good idea if we all do this together. We get that live feedback, that live interaction, and we can have a little bit more discussion around the ratings. So for those who have never seen a player ratings video, these will form the votes that we tally for the end of the year for the player of the year. So basically we give a player a score from 0 to 10, and we're going to do that. Pommy, mate, welcome to the player ratings live on the Blue Abroad YouTube channel.
Hey, mate, I'm excited about being here for the first live one. You know what I'm excited about? I only watch these videos for one reason, to be honest.
Wow.
Right? And that's to see the comments of your ratings. So I'm excited that I'm giving my own ratings as well. So I'll be live of the subject of that. But I'm just excited about seeing the comments, to be honest.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'm excited to see where everyone sits on the scale and see that live. I have not finished watching the replay yet. I was there last night. You watched the replay. Actually, mate, how was My Chemical Romance?
Oh, most fun I've had clothed on.
Okay.
Mate, Great. It was brilliant. Honestly, I've cried, I've sung. I'm a little bit hoarse today, so I'm a little bit husky for those watching on audio format. But no, it was absolutely fantastic. If you get a chance to go and see him tonight, go and see him. They are absolutely amazing. I felt 14, so I was actually on a real high. So I had to come back and watch this and digest it twice while I was excited. So now I'm excited about doing this. Can't wait.
All right. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to go through each player as they were named in the team, and then just start the chat. Now, we're starting with the best because this man was player of the game, I think, in everybody's eyes. I gave him a 10. You gave him a 9.5. Don't know much more that needs to be said about his game other than how great it was.
It was pretty impressive, especially when you put in perspective the preseason games, where there was all them rumours Sam Durden was preferred. He had the double fist spoil straight to Isaac Heaney. That was nice. To be fair, it just shows what good players do. And Lewis Young, he's nice, isn't it? Because Jack Riewoldt, I can't think of anyone I dislike more than Jack Riewoldt. And seeing him have a bad night at the expense of our boy Lewis here, 9.5. You know, I thought that was fair. I don't give 10s. You know what might be good, Terry? Explain your rating so we can actually get a good understanding. Like, what is a 10? What is a 0?
Well, I look at the player and in the context of where I see them within the team, with the standing in the team. And I use that as a base level for whether they overperformed or underperformed. So senior players probably harder to get higher scores because they're expected to do more and be more in my eyes. And then the young guys, I generally go a little light. I think I go a little light on all of them.
Yeah,
if we're being honest.
Yeah, new year, new Pom. We're a top 4 side, so I'm judging them as a top 4 side. So Lewis Young. Well, I feel that's where we should be. That should be the aspirations as a bare minimum. So for me, 10 is all Australian. You're a top 4 staple. So not going to give many 10s out this year, but 9.5. I thought that was fair because I was genuinely happy with his game.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Jacob Weitering, I gave him an 8. You gave him a 7. We're pretty much there or thereabouts. No big discrepancy there. He looked sharp. And I recall after he got injured last year against the Pies in round 11, he just never really looked the same. So it was pleasing to see him moving freely and really moving back to his best.
It was. I mean, it felt a little bit like we were judging the back line. I'm not saying they played like it, but it gave me very 2018 vibes.
Yeah.
That this back line had to play well. Like, my one concern was Weitering and Young can't do this every week. Like, a one-off, brilliant, not sustainable, but both of them held up well. I was maybe a little bit harsh because I thought Weitering is the senior player, so that came into it. I felt at times I would have liked to have seen him be a bit more adventurous with his ball movement, but it was solid. Like, honestly, 7's good. 7's good from a Pom.
Tell you what, he has a feature to his game which hasn't, like, it's, I know it's there and it shows glimpses, but he's got some really low kicking in the sense that the ball doesn't travel too high above the ground, and he pinpoints targets. And it was good to see that back on Thursday night.
Would it be? Where do you think about this? And chat, what do you think? But do you actually think Weitering's ceiling is higher than Young's? I actually feel like Young is about his level. He'll just get consistent. Yeah. So he'll get consistent. I actually feel like there's maybe 2 or 3 ladders we haven't seen from Weitering that I feel like injury is kind of hidden from us in the wrong moments. I actually feel like there is another layer to this kid's game, and that's maybe why I'm being a bit harsh at times with him. I think there is another level for him to go.
Yeah. I mean, listen, he's a vice captain at the end of the day. So I think also Lynch kicking a couple of goals might have prevented him from going all the way to a 10. But he was still good. I thought he was still one of our best. And to be honest, I thought all the defenders were. I mean, you'll see. I gave them more of a rating than the rest of the field. So,
yeah, it's like what Wow was saying. Last year he had that attacking flair. I feel like that is the natural development of Weitering. Do you know what I mean? I feel like there is. I think he's got the defending down pat. I have a feeling he might be like our Liam Jones, but really good and consistent.
Yeah,
you know. I feel like that's the next ceiling. I know it sounds weird. I just feel there's another layer to Weitering that we haven't seen yet.
For sure. Yeah. All right. Lachie Cowan, young Lachie Cowan. First gamer. Didn't play much game time. I've gone for just the bare pass mark, and you've given him a 4. What did you think about Lachie? Good to see him there.
Even though it's a 4, it's a loving 4.
Yeah.
It's a loving 4. I little bit concerned that he was blowing very quickly, which is understandable. This guy runs around like a maniac. Do you know what I mean? And there's nothing better. He gave that heavy bump to Shy Bolton. That got me up and about. He caught Dusty in like almost the first 5 minutes holding the ball. That turned me on because I was like, that is ballsy. Dustin Martin has that aura. I liked it. He did some nice things. I just feel for me, I want to see a bit more. So it was a 4 with, I need to see a bit more. Like, he's still in my team next week for me. I want to see him get 2 or 3 games. But nice start. And I want to see what his baseline is because I actually think that was way below I expected him to be.
Yeah. Fair call.
I expected more.
Next up, Mitch McGovern. You went with the pass mark. I went with the 7. We'll let you kick things off with Mitch. Had some moments.
This guy, man, I don't know where to look at him. Like, sometimes he's Stephen May, and then sometimes he's Doris Day in the back line. I don't quite get what Mitch McGovern's about. It was bizarre because there was moments where him and Young and Weitering, they locked down their defenders, and then McGovern was taking the piss and just floating through and arguably saved 4 or 5 goals with incredible vertical leap and read of the ball. But then this guy can do that and back it up with almost missing his foot for 1 kick. There was that corridor kick, which isn't so much his fault. The midfield hung him out to dry. But he's got to take that kick on, and he picks out the only Richmond defender. I'm willing to give him a benefit of doubt that he hasn't played proper football for a while. But it was annoying because, honestly, there was times that this game he could have been best on. Easily been best on for his key moments. It's just that consistency level, isn't it? And I suppose this is Mitch McGovern, isn't it? Get fit.
Yeah, well, his first contest was one that he would want to forget pretty quickly. And then I think his last few contests, probably the same. I watch him. I was there sitting on the wing, and it's so clear what he can be and what he is for the back 6 or the defense in general. I don't think I've seen him that fumbly before. I don't think I've seen him like that before. And he looked like a guy, dare I say it, that have played just a practice match in the VFL as his preseason. Now, there's a method to the madness, 23, 24 round season. Our first bye is in round 15. So it is a marathon, not a sprint. And, I'm hoping that we'll look back on that. And I'm pretty sure what we saw last night from him can be rectified because it was like a touch thing. It wasn't like, I don't know. It seemed like something that can pretty easily be rectified with some repetition and some consistency in his training and his gameplay.
There was a lot of it though. I mean, like
It
Dustin Martin went to
was.
take a bounce and missed the bounce. I mean, Dustin Martin is one of the best players in the league, and it was a weird game. It was almost like at times I would describe this game from both sides as it was like we had very good impressions of the real players. It was like some kind of like circus show. Like no one looked really good, but yeah, Mitch, it was weird. That first contest was so un-Mitch like. He looked like he was a debutant.
Oh man, I looked across to the people I was sitting with, and I was just like, "All right, welcome back, welcome back." So yeah, maybe I went a little bit too easy on him. I think you might be right. I could adjust that to a 6. I just think
he's a key asset. Like
he is, mate. He is.
Like
the
way he picked off 2 of his intercept marks were clean to Tom Lynch, and he picked them off. Saved 2 goals from Tom Lynch, and I'm just thinking if you can do that and then not chunk the kick. Jesus, you're all Australian.
Yeah. All right. I'll accept that. I like it.
I love Mitch.
I like that. Next was Sam Docherty. I went with the 8. You went with the 7. Pom, Doc, kicked a goal as well. Unreal.
Well, I mean, you can see the state of the game that when he kicked his goal, he looked our most dynamic goal threat at the time. I mean, coming from halfback flank / midfield, but Doc is Doc, isn't he? And that's what you love about him. This was a very Doc type game. I thought these are the games I think Doc is better at than when the football is really good. This suits Doc, scrappy. Everyone's all over the place. Doc just gets on with it. So no, I enjoyed Doc's game. I had no issues with it.
Yeah, pretty straightforward here. Got a few comments. Wildy gave him a 7. Very assured. Adam says he loves him. Then we've got Adam Saad. We're close. 6s and 7s. Tell you what, speaking of moments, so Doc had his moment where he kicked the goal. At the time, I remember thinking, oh God, that's an important moment for us. And then Saad getting run down, I don't remember seeing it in his time with us. I don't remember seeing him getting run down like that. So I felt like that was a momentum moment that really shifted things in the heat of the moment. But look, he still finds a way to be very effective, Adam Saad. I mean, that was just one time he got chased down. It's not really like it tells a story of his entire game. But yeah, I think for the most part, he was pretty good for us.
I think for me, the 6 isn't really fair on him in the terms of it's more how his midfield operated. I felt like the lines between the midfield and the defense were so distorted that we couldn't really see the best. And I don't know. I wouldn't say he was harboring an injury, but to me, from the eye of watching it now twice, it felt like he didn't have that zip. It felt like it took him a while to get to his highest impact speed. It took a while for him to seem to reach the tempo, but I enjoyed his game. I mean, if that is Saad's base, what you saw today, that's probably his worst game. And that's why Saad is so valuable.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that. So I'm trying to think, where was the run and dash off halfback? Where did that really come from in that game? I don't recall seeing an outstanding player with that run and dash. I would have thought Cowan being in, either Saad would be focusing on a lockdown role and Cowan would be generating that run, or the other way around. And I don't think we got it from anyone consistently enough throughout the game.
It was a very measured performance, high kicking stats. Yep. You can see Voss, what he was working on Sydney made sense, that he was taking away intercept game and controlling the footy. And I like him doing that, but I also don't. I think there's a time and a place. And I think when you saw Carlton last year really hurt Richmond, it was when we went into that 4th and 5th gear, went through the motions, dared to believe. And that's the one thing that's left a sour taste in my mouth. That 4th quarter was the time you unshackle this bloke. You say, right, 3 quarters, you've been measured. Go, go, go. Especially when Charlie kicks that goal, they have to come at you. It was the perfect opportunity then to pick them off because they had to commit men. And it felt like they were trying to look for that perfect performance at times. But yeah, I do love Saad.
Of course. All right. Ollie Hollands, 6s and 5s. It was a good first up start. I think he really warmed himself into the game and into his career with that 1-on-2 contest in our defensive 50 against Tom Lynch and another Richmond player. And that really got the crowd up and about. And I think from that moment, he pretty much had the confidence to say, all right, I'm off. Here I go.
Interesting one, because when you go back, you look at the GPS data, you look at the game as well. All of a sudden, you saw that Akers bizarrely played the O'Brien role more offensive, and Ollie Hollands was given the more defensive role. Hence, the leading player on the comp for running. Them running numbers are ridiculous. You also saw spent 90% of his time behind the ball in that defensive pocket. Kind of played the Noons role. Remember him?
Yeah.
And I found that very bizarre for me. Very bizarre, because that's not his game in juniors. He was more of the O'Brien type. So a weird one that they flipped to Akers ran from his natural role. Solid in them contests. Anyone who can stand under Tom Lynch in the size he is, I thought put paid to doubt to anyone who doubted him, to be honest, because that shows he's ready. Obviously, I reckon what we're looking at here is Ed Langdon, Carl Amon all started as defensive wingers, and they worked on their defensive craft before they were given the offensive duties. So maybe that's it, but I don't like Blake Acres playing that attacking role. I don't think you're ever going to see the best out of Blake Acres. That is a concern, but fairly bog standard. Do you know what I mean? Fairly bog standard. It's not a great game. It's not a horrible game, but game one, pretty good.
Yeah, I thought he did his job. And like I said, I was sitting on the wing, and it's his work rate. It stands out. It shows. And then you try not to get too sentimental, but you think about it from his point of view. You know, literally 12 months ago, 18 months ago, 24 months ago, he's sitting watching games as a fan, hoping to play for his childhood club. Like, he literally achieved one of the many things that he wants to in his life last night. Him and Cowan. So, yeah, that contest with Lynch, really, it was instant for me. I had no queries around him running out the game. It was more around the physicality and how he would go. And every time I feel like I've been mindful of his physicality or his size or whatever the case may be, he shows how good he is in other areas. And so once that big few layers of strength gets added to his body, he keeps that running capacity. Yeah, it's a good start. I like what I saw.
A lot of running in this new edition of Voss's game plan, which I don't know if it's a concern or not. I mean, obviously you've got the best runner in the league to come back, but I felt watching Ollie, that said to me that we're definitely going to be looking at that transition.
Yeah. Even
though it didn't work, because I do rather see Ollie come back and Blake Acres than Harry, which we resorted to. Do you know what I mean? But do you know what I mean? Fairly bog standard. You look at most wingers who are elite now. Yeah. This is where they come, and wingers genuinely don't nurture in VFL. They play in seniors.
I don't know if it's too dangerous to be saying, he reminds me of this player, but the Xavier Dersma model at Port Adelaide when he first came to the league is the one that it reminded me. Ollie Hollands reminded me of Xavier Dersma in his first few seasons at Port. The running capacity, the long kicking, and I think you're right. Once that offense is a focus for him and he finds his role within the team, there's something that can be unlocked there.
The big thing with him as well is you've got to remember that Carlton attacked the wing 12% of the time in the first half, and Blakers was anonymous as well, or Blake Acres at that point. So he was feeding on scraps. Did definitely come alive in the second half when Carlton started to expand a little bit, particularly in the start of the fourth. I felt like he looked a lot more offensive. But it's going to be an interesting one because I'm not too sure of Acres being attacking and Hollands being defensive. I understand the logic, but that is VFL. If he wants him to do that, for me, that's VFL. I think you're going against Ollie's natural skill set.
Yeah. All right. Paddy Cripps. I went the bare pass mark. You went the 7. I felt like what you said about Saad resonated with me with Cripps. I felt like what he did last night was he found a way to just find and reach that minimum standard of his minimum best. 25 odd touches at worst, 4 or 5 tackles, whatever it was. He definitely lifted in the fourth quarter, but he wasn't at his energetic sharpness. I didn't feel from round one.
It's probably fair. I mean, for me, I thought the midfield was woeful. Was woeful. I felt, and I enjoyed Cripps because he did do the tackles. He did try and win them contests.
Yep.
He was our leading clearance player. Do you know what I mean? As you'd expect, he was our leading total clearance player. He was our leading tackler. It was Cripper doing, Cripper things, which is important for me, which is important. I felt he was left. It gave me shades of early Carlton. At times, it felt like him and Hewett were being left to do everything, particularly in the fourth, and 10 touches in the fourth. This is my big bugbear with Carlton. Richmond knew what was going on. They knew that Carlton under pressure target Cripps, and it was becoming very one-dimensional. I felt like in the fourth, and I feel for him because it felt Carlton dropped the ball in that fourth of maybe giving him some help, and I felt like Cripps. Yeah, that's why I gave him a 7. I felt like Cripps, if we had 3 more, felt like we would have been all right in the midfield, but they got battered in the midfield against a side that isn't very strong in that department.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Wildy gave him a 6. Anthony says he felt like he was about 30% off. Seemed to be a little flat in his first 3. He's missing Walsh, says Adam. I think we all are. I wonder if the ankle is worse than first thought. Maybe it's a watch this space. But yeah, he always represents himself and the club well. It's just, that midfield just definitely wasn't at its best. So that's Cripper. Blake Acres, this was a bit of a low one. Yeah, it was not the debut I think he was hoping for. I think it was a very much a welcome to Carlton, welcome to a big Melbourne club, welcome to, that. And I just watched a little clip from the Ball Magnets and, Tom Mitchell talking about his time at Collingwood. I think he's with Dill Buckley, and he's talking about how he can feel the gravity of playing for Collingwood. And I think this wouldn't be any different for Carlton coming from St Kilda and Fremantle. No disrespect to those teams. Well, actually, full disrespect to those teams, but they're not they're not Carlton. And it is a big Melbourne club, and there's big expectations, especially where we're at right now as a group. So, yeah, I think that's not the Blake Acres I know that I've seen.
It's interesting because midpoint last year, you heard Longmuir come out and say that Acres won them a game. Do you know what I mean? Won them a game. His coolness under pressure, and something certainly happened to him. For me, the big thing with Blake, what I didn't like is you saw his defensive craft really well. The intrinsic things, the 1%ers, ranks really high at that. I just feel like you needed Ollie and him switched round. He's a lot better behind the ball, playing that Jack Noon's extra defender if you need him role. Never really rated him ahead of the ball. And that's why I was kind of surprised there. I don't think his skill set is that. I thought it was a disservice. Obviously, I've probably cracked it and given him the 1 because of that spilled mark. Like that spilled mark is forever indebted in there. But he was definitely, I'm like, some people look at these rating videos and they take them stupidly. This is just a game.
Yeah,
right?
Correct.
One game. So do you know what I mean? Like Charlie, he's going to get a bit of a bad rating. I'm not expecting him. This isn't his career average. So I expect if this is the worst we ever see of it, I don't care. But yeah, I think Blake it's an interesting one because obviously, like you say, it is a big club, big step up. Do you know what I mean? You're playing in front of 95k, but I just expected more. This guy has come to fill a hole, and at the moment, the hole was better filled with Cottrell and Noons.
Well, yeah. And I think I've said this pretty much every time I've spoken about Blake. I don't expect him to be a star. I expect him to be a workhorse. I expect the reputation of Blake Acres' game, like when he plays for us, to be one of hard work, working hard defensively. If he gets on the end of something offensively, great. But yeah, I'm sure. Look, I'm sure he's going to be better for it. And that's.
I'll give him how he walked off the ground.
Yeah,
meant something to me. He was He was hurt, and that's my big question mark. Body language with Carlton players. He actually looked like he'd fucking lost the game, and that turns me on because that means it means something to him. And if it means something to you, that means you're going to get better. So I enjoyed that. His face, get on Getty Images. They've taken about 80 pictures of him as he's walking off. He is proper gutted. Proper gutted. And every Carlton player gets around him, particularly the two youngsters are the first there. So I like that. I like that bit of comradeship. And I expect him to have a good game against Geelong next week.
Yeah, agreed. Next up, Ed Curnow. So I initially gave him a 5. And then I messaged you before the show started to bump him up to an 8. And you've gone the 2. We'll let you start. So this is a real polar opposites case.
Okay. Well, I mean, he was there, obviously, for a defensive role, right?
Yep.
First of all, that was confirmed by Voss. So first quarter, he's on Liam Baker. Second quarter, he's switched between Baker and Rioli. Both smashed us. Third quarter, he's put in a bit of time. Taranto, that didn't work. He went back down forward to help. Again, Baker got a bit off the chain. I don't even think Baker knew Ed Curnow was there. And then he's gone into the midfield fourth quarter on Prestia, and Prestia has done it. Now, for me, if he's there for a tagging role, just look at raw numbers before using your eyes. Do you know what I mean? Prestia received 19 touches from... Taranto received 19 touches direct from Prestia. There's a problem. Do you know what I mean? In the fourth quarter, him and Ed weren't close. Do you know what I mean? He did stifle him, but then I asked the question, why wasn't that done earlier? Because that was a definite haul. And that's why I think people are saying Cripps had a bad game. Cripps had to play more defensive. Do you know what I mean? Which we don't want him to do anymore. And that was partly because of the exits out of there. But honestly, if you watch him in the forward line, tagging Prestia when Prestia's half dead, right? And Prestia's never been a 4-quarter player. Look what he did with Baker and Rioli. If anything, were more effective when Ed was there. And this is no disrespect. I love Ed. But for me, I watched this game back, and the second time I focused on Ed for the second quarter. And our forward pressure was actually the worst it's been since Teague. And do you remember that was part of the reason they sacked him? It was actually in the report when they got rid of him that the forward pressure has never improved, and that was his pigeonhole. Says something for me. That says something if he's there. And he was there to bring pressure.
Fair. I saw a lot of unrewarded running from him. I saw a lot of running from him, which created pockets of space for Ollie Hollands to come into, or Blake Acres at times to come into as well. I noticed it. I mean, for me, it was really a game where we didn't look spaced at all. Richmond seemed to really push us into the contest, and we really didn't look very well spaced. But I thought the times that we did try and switch the ball, which wasn't much, I remember seeing a lot of flat feet, but not too often with Ed. I guess I was looking at his work rate from the ground, and I just thought he put a workmanlike performance in. He still had a few of those just sloppy kicks, sloppy turnovers, which a couple of them did. But I think even in our scoring change, which we've kicked, 8 goals for the game, pretty sure he was involved in at least 3 or 4 of them from memory, which, depending on how you look at it, it could be a positive or a negative. Positive because he's been involved, negative because we've only kicked 8 goals. But yeah, I liked his work rate, but I think I'll meet you somewhere in between. Maybe I should have stuck to the 5.
He's probably harsh. I mean, but then again, I don't
Top
care.
4 standards, mate. Top 4 standards. Mate, Fair enough.
I don't care. For me, if you're bringing someone in who's had 0 tackles inside 50 on a defensive role, do you know what I mean? 4 stoppages attended, 4 centre bounces. I'd love to ask Voss the question. When Taranto was doing whatever the fuck he wanted and Prestia did, where was the idea of bringing him there to maybe free Cripps up? Because I don't think Cripps was injured. I don't understand the flat-footedness. I just saw Cripps being 2018 Cripps, and he had to get in and dirty, and he wasn't free. And then I'm thinking, we got fucking Ed there. Make Ed deal with these idiots and let Cripps impact himself. So I was disappointed. I kind of left that game, left the viewing, and thought, I would have liked having an extra winger. I actually think that would have helped Ollie, and I actually think that would have helped Blake. Do you know what I mean? And had a third rotation. Did we need to go that? Because Baker, 7 out of 8 of our scores were from intercepts around the ground. Like the forward pressure was woeful. So for me, he was brought in for that. That's what they said. Why has it got worse?
Yeah, fair enough. All right, Zach Fisher, not his best. Started off pretty well, maybe his first 10 minutes, and then for whatever reason, he just couldn't stay in the game, and he wasn't alone. And I think that was certainly not his best game. He's definitely he's gone levels above this game. I mean, looking just at his stat line from the game, and even though that's not everything, but just looking at that, I don't remember seeing those type of numbers next to his name since maybe his like first to third years. So yeah, maybe there's a reason for it, but for whatever reason in this game, I felt like he just wasn't able to impact anywhere near as what he can.
This was bizarre because, last year we talked a lot about rotation, getting more dynamic in the midfield. Very concerned that they were so dominant around that area, particularly in hit-outs and effectively in first use, that this guy here only had 2 stoppages. And watching the game with no pressure, with no, only knowing it was a draw, I watched him the first quarter and thought, fuck, he's going to have a good game, right?
Yeah.
Because I could see how the midfield was going, was like, surely Zach Fisher goes into the middle of it. And he had one centre bounce in the first. And I was like, there it is. There's that Zach we know and love. A little bit of the drive, directness. After that, I didn't see him. I actually forgot, and this is no disrespect to him. I write notes every quarter on a player. I missed Zach Fisher in the third. And it was only when I double checked and I was like, why have I only got 21 players? I didn't notice him. And this is one of them things where Zach Fisher, it worries me because he's one of them players that needs to be invested. And VFL, they tried Jack Martin on the ball, which seemed to work. Do you know what I mean? Last week, it seemed to work, get him invested. Fisher, that's how we got him invested last year, giving him a couple of cheap touches. But what is his role? Wowdy nails it. 0 pressure, no ball impact. Why was he there? I actually look back at this game. At times, we had 15 players on the field because 3 of them were just walking around with no defined role. And interesting one.
Well, when I think of Zach at his best, it's when he's running toward goal in open space. So from, say, 85 meters to goal, facing goal, running towards goal, hitting up a target. That's when I see him at his best. Now, granted, his first goal was great, well positioned, kicked it. But yeah, I'm with you. I think. Does this mean? Is it because maybe Durden wasn't there that they needed to have him strictly in that forward line? I don't know. To be fair, supply into the forward line was fucked. So there is that factor as well.
It's a bizarre one. I felt sorry for Zach because I know he's capable of more, but I just saw a man that had no defined role. I hate to say this, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way. It reminded me of when he played for Teague, when Teague was really open that he wasn't a midfielder, he wasn't good enough, but he was kind of a forward, but they didn't think he was good enough. But then they look at the squad and go, oh, fuck, it's either him or Cam Poulsen. So we'll play Zach. And it felt like Zach was just there because he was better than the next. I think he's worth more than that. I thought last year he's earned, in my opinion, I don't know what Chat and Terry feels, but in my opinion, he's earned that 4th, 5th rotation in the midfield.
Yeah. I feel the same way. But he will certainly bounce back. No doubt about that. Next up, the 100-game milestone, Jack Silvagni. Fascinating. Well, there's actually a lot to this. There's actually a lot to this situation. Firstly, the game. Kicked his goal nice and early, seemed to get into the flow of it. Obviously, we knew he'd be playing a bit in the ruck when needed. I don't know. I just felt like not enough impact from what I know he has done in the past from Jack. And I know how proud he is as well.
Yeah, no, him and Jack Martin, we'll come on to Martin in a minute. They're playing a role, in my opinion, that's equally as important as McGovern's opposite end. And it felt good at first, that first quarter before we started pissing about, putting him in the ruck. Please, Voss, end that experiment. Please. But he gets the extra 1.5 from me purely for the ruck, because he's the only person who rucked this week who didn't get bodied by Jack Riewoldt, which is a disgrace if you get bodied by Jack Riewoldt and you're a ruckman. But I felt Jesus, that first quarter, I felt he was a mile ahead of Martin. And it's a shame that we couldn't have just thrown Jack Martin in to the ruck and we could have seen Jack, because I thought Jack presented well, really high up the ground. Nice couple of little lead-up marks there, which I felt we lacked. Jack Martin didn't do that. So it's interesting because, to me, this screamed, if Jesus is in this team, he's got that high half-forward role, and you can't play Pitternet, Jesus, J-Mart, and TDK. So, for me, I'd rather have this guy having a defined role. That's going to be the new catchphrase, defined roles.
Defined role.
Because Jack Silvagni, again, is basically the stand there and be tough for TDK, and TDK is the legs of Pitternet. Just give 3 of these players 3 fucking roles, please, Carlton Football Club.
Yeah. And then there was the post-game, 100-game celebration. I didn't spend much time on Twitter. I went on this morning when I posted the video and had a bit of a look, and I saw a bit of talk around. Obviously, Steve wasn't there for the photo. He was in the car. He was invited. He didn't come. Initially, I don't know. I don't really care either way. It's none of my business what, this personal situation is. I think from a fan's point of view, and I guess we're just not there yet where the club and SOS have fully reconciled. And that is what it is. That's relationships. They're just not ready yet. That was my take on Steve not being there. Does it matter? Like, I'm sure he's going to see Jack privately. Is it really just all about the optics? Does that really matter? Doesn't really bother me, but I thought the fact that conversation came up and, the mainstream went with the story, I don't know. It was a bit of a blow up for me. Not a big deal, but also a reminder that relationship is not as clean and healthy as what it once was.
I mean, what was the excuse? Ben did a tweet, which I didn't understand, but he said Dad was tired and there's no story in it. At the end of the day, it's his dad. I couldn't give a fuck what goes on. Quiet heart of hearts couldn't care what goes on in their private lives. They're paid professional football athletes. I love them if they wear navy blue. If they don't wear navy blue, I'm impartial and I'll analyze them just through professional respect. What a stupid story. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's his son. If he doesn't want to go to it, he doesn't have to. There is no legal obligation to be a supportive father and show your support in a set way. How do we know? End of it. Jack Silvagni didn't get presented a malt whiskey that Surge presented Steve, and they sat and had a nice, cool scotch together in the patio, and he put his hand on him and goes, Granddad would be proud of you. We don't know that. You know what I mean? And I'm sure Stephen is incredibly proud, like all men are proud of their sons. So I didn't like it. Stupid press.
Classic. Jack Martin. So obviously, gave him a 0. I don't know if I've given many zeros before. Maybe 1, maybe 2, I don't know. But probably another guy who seemed to me like somebody who had just played a VFL practice match as his match simulation against opposition. I could see he tried to lift in that fourth. I really could, but it's just a bit of a tease for me, because I think the reason why I gave him a 0, one of the big reasons why I'm harsh on him is because I believe in him. I believe in what he can do. And again, similar to Mitch, I'm hoping that this modified program that Jack Martin's been on is gonna show us something in the season. But I just felt like he just wasn't able to impact the game in any, if any, situations.
You know, I'm a fan of Jack Martin, right? And honestly, he's a great bloke. But the big thing for me is I gave him a 1 purely because he led the ground on forward 50 pressure acts and tackles inside 50, which kind of sums up why I'm slightly disappointed with the performance, because that's not Jack Martin's game. Do you know what I mean? Jack Martin is there to be that X factor difference maker. And I think it's a total waste of time, him on defensive duties. So I gave him a 1 purely for changing his boots and getting on there. But it's a disappointment because he didn't look like he was leading for the ball where Jesus did in the first quarter. it's a disappointment for me. I'd never be as harsh to give anyone a 1. I mean, a 0. Pom's baseline is a 1. I start at 1.
I can be too nice. Maybe I'm a little bit too harsh.
No, I love it because I think spot on. You look at how Richmond are beat. They are always beat by the next goal kicker, not your key defect forwards. It's that next guy that hurts them. And it was a game for Jack Martin or JSauce. Unfortunately, JSauce was pissing about with this ruck idea someone had. Jack Martin had no excuses. And I was a bit upset with that one because I thought this was his chance. Yeah. This was his chance.
Petra, just for context, these are the votes that will be used for the end of season award. So usually we'll see these at the end of the season. This is like a live vote count all the way through the season. There is a discussion, and because when you think about this third forward, this dynamic third forward, third goal kicker that we're wanting between Jack Silvagni, who we know has to play in the ruck sometimes, and then Jack Martin, who's next? And the conversation goes, generally speaking, from where I hear it, it's, oh, we'll just play Josh Honey. I still don't think maybe last night Josh Honey would have been a bit better, but I don't think you go into that game without Jack Martin if he's fit. And the same probably goes for next week. I believe what we're doing with him is, all right, he's on a modified program. We want to make sure he's got match fitness. He's going to get fit throughout the season. So I'm not dropping him, but I want Jack Martin, mate. You know, we've seen him a couple of times. I want him in the team.
We haven't got onto the guy that I feel should replace him. Right? We haven't got onto the guy yet, but for me, I don't know about anyone else. I'm tired of having this potential could be.
Yeah. Fair.
Like for me, I'm being deadly serious when I say to the audience, this is top 4 football, man. Like, stop giving them out. Stop saying, oh, it's okay. We've got fucking 22 rounds to go. 23 rounds. Do you know what I mean? Like, that for me is an incredible feeble mentality that will see you never win a flag. Right? It's one game. It wasn't great. Richmond, they were dog shit as well, let's be honest. But let's just think about it logically. Jack Martin can't do that in a prelim final versus Brisbane at the Gabba on a Friday night. If he does do that, we go home. And then if anyone has the audacity to say, oh, but Jack Martin might come good, I will lose my plot if we lose a prelim because Jack Martin puts in a 1 out of 10. So for me, I'm looking, Jack needs to do more. He's a mature player. He's played a lot of AFL games.
He's a senior player. He is, and he's a very good senior player when he's at his best. So,
and for me, he's a higher ceiling than JSauce. And
yes.
My question is why is he not leading to the ball like JSauce was? He should be demanding it. He should be slapping Cripps in the face and saying, get the ball to me. I will win this game. And it didn't feel like he did that.
Yeah. All right. Next up is Charlie Curnow. Pretty stock standard. Yeah, he kicked his 3. He finds a way. He really does. He finds a way. He wasn't alone in being a player that made a few errors. Oh, you got the little... Oh, that's right. By the way, I got the little bracelet. Yeah.
Sisterly Creations, they made me a Charlie Curnow stress ball.
What'd you make of Charlie's game?
I gave him a 5, so no one can say Pom is biased, right? Because he should get a 10. My thing with Charlie is, you know, when he kicked 2 in a row in the third quarter, and then he had that beautiful soccer in the fourth. They're Charlie's moments. I wanted to see from Charlie him slapping the midfield, doing a sticks Kernahan, saying, just get the ball to me, boys. You don't have to do anything else. Win ball, kick it. I will do the rest. And I felt like after Charlie kicked his 3rd, not his fault, but I felt his hard leads fell away. And it was almost like he left it to Harry. And I don't know if there was something there like take it in turns or some weird thing. But I felt at that point, Charlie needs to take seniority as the Coleman medalist and go, screw Harry, screw Jack Martin, screw Jack Silvagni's 100th. Just kick the ball into the square. I'm there. I will make it happen. And I felt after that, Charlie's impact went down. We started to see him up the wing. I just feel like Charlie, this was the game where Charlie wins it. But Charlie was doing Charlie things. He was quiet most game, found his moment. That's why he's such a good footballer. When he has them moments, he can kick 3 goals. When Grimes was probably giving him a bit of difficulty for most of the game, he found a way. So I would have liked to have seen him do a sticks, though. Say, look, kick the ball to me, boys. That's the game plan. Kick the ball to me. Finish this off for us.
It was strange because Harry seemed to, and we'll talk about Harry in a moment, but Harry seemed to really have control of the ball in the air, up the ground, and becoming the kick inside 50. We just couldn't get it there clean enough. And when I think of the best teams with their forward lines who lead at the ball, I think of Geelong. We don't lead too much at the football. We let the kicker dictate where the ball's going to go and where the forwards are going to go, as opposed to the other way around, or a mix of both. And maybe that's the game plan. Maybe it is. I don't know. But yeah, I would love to see a situation where we move ahead of the ball when the ball is stationary 70 meters from goal. We just seem to resort back to that same, all right, pack it up in this one spot. And maybe we're just playing a positioning game and we just back the fact that we're going to at least halve the contest and be in position for a crumb. So I don't know, but Charlie found a way. I think you summarized it pretty well.
It's a big thing as well. Like Lewis here, good friend of the channel. And Lewis, if you're listening, PM me because you won the shirt. Been trying to get hold of you and I can't find you on Insta anymore. So please reach out to me, Lewis. But to answer Lewis's question as well, and a bit about yours, it kind of is linked. Charlie and Harry get held, but they don't get the freeze. And I can give you a real easy explanation. Go back and watch this game, and they don't make it obvious they're being held because they are, as Terry says, crumbing their own fucking football. So they get held, but then they go down, and it looks like it's a motion. And there's a great footage of Charlie being like that, but his left hand is picking the ball up. So to the umpire, in fast real time, that dip of height looks like he's trying to get his own crumb. Where you watch Tom Lynch and Jack Rewalt, they stand upright because once the ball hits the deck, it's not their problem. So it's really obvious if Carlton hold them and they drop high, it's obvious they're being held. And that is a big thing that's happened at Carlton Football Club for 2 years. You've got to remember, Charlie Curnow was our second best goal crummer last year. A key forward crumbing snags. Let that sink in. It's unheard of. You don't see it anywhere else. Yeah. So spot on, Terry. Charlie should not be crumbing his own football. That's what we pay $250K for little small guys to do. So important thing, because it'd be nice for Charlie and Harry to be left alone to do what they do best.
Yeah, fair. Next up was Harry. I thought Harry looked really sharp. The way he was marking the ball, I thought his speed off the mark looked good. He really patrolled the air, as I just mentioned. Just didn't convert on the scoreboard.
You talk about stats are misleading, and I always mention this. There's some stats that you can pull out and you can totally cheat and just create a fictitious story.
Yeah.
With Harry, the biggest fictitious stat sometimes is our inside 50s, right? Because look at the shit this guy marks.
Yeah.
Like, so there's that mark on the wing, that exit ball, right? That exit ball. He took a mark and he had Grimes on him and Nankervis, and he's taken it one-handed while being pulled back, right? Now, in reality, if we had a normal key forward, he wasn't a freak of nature, that's a mark, back, rebound, inside 50. That's what really excites me. But that's the problem with Harry. Harry is having to take a mark on 3 guys. That kick with Lochie O'Brien, yeah, he slips over. He had the chance to win it. But, Jesus, do you know what I mean? Like, in an ideal world, if he was Jeremy Cameron playing for Geelong, who get him one out all the time, probably have 90 goals a year, 100 goals a year. Same with Charlie. So these guys are so good because they do freakish things, and it would be lovely with the addition of the midfielders we've got to give them something easy, because all of his marks, I went back and watched all of his marks, they're ridiculous. Like Christian says, contested mark beast. They're idiotic marks that he has no right taking. He shouldn't have the marks he had this game because he didn't get one chest mark. They were all ridiculous ones over his head, having 8 people hang off him. It's ridiculous.
I'm going to put down Harry's conversion to Ed Sheeran. Did you see the photo of like where Harry slipped over?
Yeah.
Like literally where the grass meets the grass after they've replaced it from Ed Sheeran. It was so strange because I felt like he looked really sharp. And then for him to slip over like that, like he had a few errant kicks and some skill errors, which again, we say it, they all did. But that last moment, I don't know. We'll get to Lochie O'Brien eventually. Maybe we'll talk about the play there because that was a good discussion. I felt one way when I was there. I felt another way when I watched the replay. But yeah, it was unfortunate that he slipped over Harry, and who knows? Who knows what happened?
Would it be great if this guy wasn't taking 7 out of 10 marks up the wing?
Yeah, I know.
Like that kills me. Why is he taking marks 70 away from goal?
Is that where you want someone like a Jack Silvagni instead of Harry?
Well, in pre-season when we got excited against Sydney, Blake Acres was one of them guys with TDK. Obviously, Pitternet was playing, and Pitternet would be the other side, and they left Charlie at high half forward and McKay in goal. That's the dream. Yeah. But can you imagine, like, just go back and look at the great forwards. Gary Ablett Sr. taking marks at half-back flank. They'd tell you they're too good for that. Like, yeah. I don't like it because he's a freak. He's a freak. Like, Cowan should be kicking this ball in, and he takes marks he has no right to take.
Yeah. All right. Let's move along. TDK. Yeah, I think we saw it pretty similarly. Wasn't a bad game. He competed well. Got bodied out. Probably, he's still there. Still there where he's still getting bodied out. He missed Pitto. I think Pitto, I can see why we talk about playing them together because they complement each other. But I thought he showed some positive signs. But I couldn't find anything more than a 6 for him.
I'll give TDK one thing. He worked Nankervis massively around the ground.
Yeah.
Which excited me because that's his job, right? He was the legs. And that's why I come back to, we talk about the high half forward. For me, it's TDK. For me, if we can find a way to have him where Jack Martin was for 80% of the game and then swing him on pinch hitting in the ruck, and Pitternet does the hard yakka, and then TDK works that flank as the exit ball. For me, that is, and Jack nails it there. For me, he's a second ruck forward. That is where he's going to get 600, 800K from. For me, when I look at him doing it at solo ruck, he will never have the frame to do it. Historically, players like him with the frame are never senior rucks. In fact, the AFL is proof that athletic rucks don't exist anymore. We have a freak in Max Gawn. The rest are very dual-based. Do you know what I mean? Luke Jackson has a frame where he could put on a lot of size, but I think if they're wise, they will keep that rotation because Luke Jackson's dangerous. And people forget TDK kicks a lot of snags, high 80% goal kicking. I'd love to see him play that high half forward role. The third, I reckon, imagine them three there and actually settle on that because I think sometimes we get too cute with him. And I worry about TDK because he fights, he competes. It's just physically impossible. When you look at a man like Nang, it's impossible for a bloke like him to outsmart, outwit him. He's never going to. That is nature, and he's got to accept it. And I want to see something better. I really want to see him get a defined role that's going to complement him.
Yeah. Fair call. George Hewett. Oh, mate, I thought at halftime I was thinking, well, maybe he's our most important player, which I've always felt is one of the three. But yeah, it was a really good reminder of how important he is and how much we missed him towards the back end of last year. Just the way he goes about it.
You want positives and stuff like that, do you know what I mean? Like, this man is a positive. This guy here, if we could find another Hewett in that midfield, things like yesterday don't happen because everything is monotony, basics. No sexy craft from this fella, just cold, hard averages. And that's what I love about George. I felt stiff giving him a 9. I felt unclean. I had to give him a 9 purely because the midfield got pantsed. I judged them as a group as well as an individual. But tell you what, keep this guy fit. And you know what? Anything can happen. But what a player. I love George. Yeah.
Nothing.
Just makes me happy.
Nothing, but just keeps it simple. It's to the point where you don't want to talk about him because he doesn't want to be spoken about because he just does his job. I love him. Do love him. Love what he does. Cerra. I went to 7. You went to 5. What did you make of his game?
Such a tease. And this is a good 5. This is a good 5. Yeah. This is punishment for being POM top 4. This is punishment because I expect this guy in them type of games. He's an X-factor player. He has class. He's the guy I'm expecting. Fourth quarter, chips are down, makes something happen. And I felt in the fourth, he couldn't get into it. And that's where I'm looking for. That Walsh would have impacted, would have found a way. For me, this is where I want Cerra. I want Cerra in that fourth to be like, Cripps, mate, you give me the ball, mate. You can't kick. I'll hit targets. I'll hit Harry out in space. I can do this. And it's no knock on him. It just didn't happen for him, but it didn't happen for a lot of players. But he's that guy. They're the games that I'm looking at Cerra and like, you're the touch. You're the difference maker, my friend. So it's a stiff 5, but I do love Cerra.
Fair. Then we've got Jesse Motlop. Again, pretty much saw him the same. He was lively. He definitely was lively. I just thought it was just I gave him a pass mark there or thereabouts. I thought was his game.
Part of the forward line that just left Harry and Charlie to do everything. And I love him coming up the ground, but if he comes up the ground, he's got to be there at the fall of the ball. And when Curnow and Harry are mopping up their own crumbs, that kills me. That Jesse's
it's frustrating to see. It really is. It's frustrating to see no one there at the fall of the ball.
You look at that kick into Harry. You want him doing a Keziah Pickett, being behind Harry, and he's picking up that crumb. He dances, he kicks, and then he goes up to our cheer squad. He grabs Nick Wishart, kisses him on the forehead. We lose our plot. They're the moments I'm looking at Jesse, and I'm a big fan of Jesse. But let's hope loads of forwards were pants. It's not just him.
Yeah. All righty. Matt Kennedy. Very similar story to Cerra, I think. Very similar story to Cerra. You've given him the top 4 standard, and fair. I like it.
For me, if Carlton are a top 4 side, Cripps no longer is the guy that does all the tackling and gets all the ball. Cripps is far too superior a human being to waste his time doing belittling things like that. And Matt Kennedy is chief, shall we call him shit kicker? And that's a compliment. He's a very good shit kicker. I want him and Hewett saying to Cripps, mate, you get yourself free. You go and do your pretty thing. We'll hold down the fort. And I felt like Kennedy had the opportunity. And again, Cripps was dragged into the shits fest that is Richmond.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you touched on it just then. We need another George Hewett. Matt Kennedy can definitely be that guy if he's going to be working alongside George. So, yeah. Nick Newman, finally. I gave him a 7. You gave him an 8.5. I thought he certainly played his role, helped the team, and then some. Freed up once Dusty went back into that midfield. What do you think of him?
Big fan. Big fan of Nick Newman. I just love, again, he's George Hewett at the back for me. Basics, mechanical,
job doer.
Boring. It allows everyone else to do the exciting thing. And quite often this guy gets left out of 22s because of it. But in my opinion, we would have won that game comfortably if we had more boring players. If you replaced a Jack Martin and, do you know what I mean, someone like that, and Ed Curnow for me, with 2 more boring players like Nick Newman in the forward line, Carlton probably win that game by 20. That's the difference. And luckily, we've got a few of them players coming back from fitness. But I love Nick Newman. He just shuts up, does his job.
Exactly. No fuss. And then finally, Matt Owies, we got one more after him. So Matt Owies, I gave him the bare pass mark. I saw 10 touches and a goal, and I thought, okay, he's back. Definitely didn't look fully fit. You gave him the 2. There's a theme here with the forwards, isn't there? Naturally, they were the worst, I would say, line on the field. And there's a theme that's probably shown up through all of their scores.
It has a huge knock-on effect as well. People blame the midfield and the back line, but when the forward line creates so much gap between their key forwards, that then makes the defence have to hit up. And we saw that a lot. A lot of midfielders leading the tackles inside 50. That's Teague ball where the midfielders overlap the first line of defence because they're reacting to how easy they're getting out the back, creating spaces behind. Then our transition defence. Then our transition itself has too much gaps. And Matty Owies, for me, he's there not to kick goals. He's there to be that 2-tackle inside 50 player, creating the pressure. The goal was nice, but that's, for me, the icing on the cake with Matty Owies. I wanted to see more. I wanted to see more pressure. And for me, he is, dare I say it, the Patrick Cripps of the forward line. He is the guy that stands up usually and says, nah, I'll tackle. I'll do it. And I felt he let Baker. Then when he went to Rioli's side, he was never near them. And that's his primary job for me. It's not kicking snags. It's making sure them guys get tackled and taking a bit of the pressure off the midfield and the defence. So that's why I gave him a 2.
Fair. He's definitely the leader of our forward pressure. And the question now comes up, if Corey Durden's available next week, do you play all 3 small forwards? Do you play 2 of the 3? If so, which 2? I'm looking forward to a fit and firing Corey Durden. I really am. So we can start getting that conversation going and start experiencing that in team selection, because that's going to make them more hungry or I guess fearful or hungry, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, he was also probably another player that looked like a guy that didn't do all the preseason matches and looked like a guy that didn't get the full preseason done. So I'm sure he'll be better for the run. The last one was Lochie O'Brien, but I don't generally give a rating to a player that plays a quarter and they're the sub. That final play, so Mitch kicks it out of defense into an open space, open paddock for Lochie O'Brien. He runs on. I saw commentary from all angles. I saw commentary from people saying he should have held the ball up. I thought it looked so good. I was on that wing as he's running past and taking a bounce. I'm thinking, go on, son. This is absolutely your moment. And in the moment, I thought he took too long to kick the ball. In the moment, I thought he took 1 or 2 too many bounces. When I watched the replay, the kick was perfect. Harry just slipped over. I don't know. It's semantics, but I could see a guy that was really hungry and he had a will about him, a real will about him. And to be honest, I was probably surprised that he started as the sub. I thought he would be selected for the team.
I mean, I loved him as the sub. I think a winger is a perfect option, someone that goes hard, stretches the play. Ironically, he came on at the perfect time as well because Carlton started to play to the wing, which Paul Lochie would have not faced that ball had he played from the start. They were the dream balls that we want to see. Kicks into space, running on. I thought what was beautiful about Lochie was there's no argument that can be made that kick was poor. That kick was where you want it. He hugged the sideline, so if it missed, stoppage. Do you know what I mean?
You learn from round 22. It's true.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? It should have been a mark. I've seen some commentary saying he should have stopped after he got to high half forward and kicked backwards. You can't coach instinct out. I'll tell you what, if he'd gone backwards, Voss would have probably banned him for 2 weeks because that is such an unnatural position. You know what? Well done, Lochie, because, you know, he will have put himself in the mindset. And if I'm Zach Fisher, if I'm Jack Martin, I'd be worried because I think there's a great argument to play Lochie O'Brien and play the extra wing and look at that rotation. Maybe try and get Adam Cerra high half forward. They flirted with that in pre-season. Get him in that rotation. I think there's a great... Lochie O'Brien put a bit of pressure on everyone there. Do you know what I mean? I think it's an interesting thing because I think the sub rule, look at Matty Cottrell. Everyone wanted to delist him until he had that cameo. So I reckon the sub rule might make a new superstar. Yeah.
It's interesting. So that's the team. Those are the player ratings. That was fun. That was fun. Let us know in the comments below if you're watching this after the fact, if you like this format. Definitely want to try something new and get us all here for the conversation. I've enjoyed it. I like hearing different perspectives. I like reading different perspectives because I'm not an expert. I'm just a fan and I love going to the football and watching the footy. And that's me. Pommy, thanks for joining, mate. That was fun.
I love this. Yeah, it's nice to spend Friday evening chatting with the gang.
Who have you got tonight?
Geelong.
Geelong. Okay. I'm going to change my tip to Geelong.
I hope it's Geelong.
Yeah, I hope so too. All right. Everybody, have a great weekend. Happy Friday. See you next week.